Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's live stream. And welcome to everyone who's on the line live on YouTube and on Twitter, as well as everyone who's watching the replay. It's wonderful to be with you. Our focus this week is on the three phases of I am, understanding the process of integration through the lens of mindfulness. Actually, as I've been reflecting on it this afternoon, I think maybe the idea of three phases of I am leaves out an important developmental phase. It probably precedes any kind of engagement with mindfulness, but I'd like to explore that a little bit as well. Before we do anything else, let's gather in our circle and open with some meditation. And then I'd like to share and reflect on these three phases, or really four phases, with you. And I've got my iPad out again, so I'm going to do some drawings today. It's been a while since I've done that. I'm also excited to answer your questions if you have anything coming up around what we're exploring today. Today's topic, or really anything spiritually. In addition, I want to welcome anyone who'd like to check in. Yanya in Switzerland has already said hi. If anyone else would like to check in and say hi. I don't have any way of knowing who's on the line unless you make a comment in the comments section, and I can never remember which side of the screen it's on. It's over here. If you're watching the YouTube live stream, you can comment over there. If you're on the replay, the comments are below, and I believe on Twitter comments are below as well. And welcome the hello if you'd like to check in, and any questions that you might have coming up. Before we do anything else, let's just take a few minutes to sink in, do a little bit of meditating, and open into sacred space together. So before we do that, though, it's helpful to set everything else aside energetically, emotionally, physically. As always, please don't operate a motor vehicle or heavy equipment of any sort during this or any time we're together. You may wonder why I'm saying that. If this is your first time, or if you're new to sitting in this circle with me, I will just tell you that oftentimes what people have an experience of is what they call going to sleep, but they're really not going to sleep in the traditional sense. They're just sort of dropping out or moving to a much deeper level of consciousness where the conscious mind has a challenging time staying with what's unfolding. And if you're doing something else at the same time, specifically if you're trying to operate heavy equipment or drive a vehicle or any kind of vehicle, it can be really dangerous because you don't really have much of a warning before you drop out. So if you could please just set all that aside and just be present with whatever is unfolding within you here and now. And even stop doing other stuff on your computer if you're on your computer or on your phone. Just give yourself the gift of whatever experience is about to follow. And you can name it or label it however you like. It's perfect. And then the next step, I just invite you to close your eyes and begin breathing in and out through the nostrils with your palms to the sky, if all of that is comfortable for you. And find that place in our worldwide circle that resonates most for you on an energetic level. Of course, you're not going to move physically from where you are to some other part of the planet right now, but energetically, find that place where everything begins resonating at a deeper level. And as you sink in, we'll do a little bit of breathing to open into our meditation for today. The meditation, as always, is divine connecting breath. Deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before in this day, all the way out to the count of 8. The thoughts that have been dominating, the emotions that have been dominating, and also the way of being that has been dominating during this day, all the way out to the count of 8. Another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since you were born, all the way out to the count of 8. And now you might be letting go of things that have been challenging in your life, but also the invitation to let go of everything. That is also the positive things, the things you understand about yourself, the things you don't understand. Just let it all go. Opening up to that blank canvas upon which and through which the divine expresses completely. The vessel of your body, your mind, your emotions, and your being, all the way out to the count of 8. Hmm. And another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since the inception of your soul, all the way out to the count of 8. Head, heart, and hips, and into the mystery, releasing the totality of your being into the divine mystery. And still with your eyes closed, just notice that cue of breath in front of your face. You breathe in, another unit joins the back of the cue. And as you're present with the cue, there may even be a color or colors beginning to present. If you're assigning one, perhaps pick something not normally present in the body except perhaps in your eyes. And just begin noticing how that color is infusing itself through the entirety of the cue. When you're ready, with your next breath, be with the breath from the perspective of the color as you breathe in nostrils, crown, lungs. And then sitting in the lungs as you continue breathing in and out at whatever tempo. Noticing that color lining the interior of the lungs and then eventually moving through to the bloodstream. And perhaps as you move time forward a little bit faster, eventually each cell in the body is imbued with this color. And there's a simple conclusion that we can make, a statement that I'll make here in just a moment. And I really just invite you to be with whatever you feel in your body or on all the various levels intuitively and also rationally. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. Just notice the resonance with that statement, and perhaps the dissonance if there is any. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. And then shift your perspective from inside the lungs to outside the body, and then perhaps even off away from the planet at a distance so you can see the entirety of the planet in your mind's eye. And with it, notice the breath of the planet is serving you and that cue of breath that you're breathing in. And so it is for your neighbors and your neighbors' neighbors, and so on and so forth. And notice that the breath of the planet supports and serves all these people in these concentric rings spreading out from your location without any attention paid to the natural or perhaps human imposed boundaries that we experience or perceive around the planet. The division of provinces or states or regions or countries, or the natural division of continents, of oceans, the artificial perception of the hemisphere, the northern or the southern, the eastern or the western, and then the totality of the planet. With each breath, you are connected to every single person on the planet. And notice the breath of the planet, not just serving people, but everything. Animals, insects, plants, rocks, dirt, water, fish, everything. With each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything above, upon, and within the planet itself. Indeed, you may even begin to experience at a felt in the body, a visceral level, that you are breathing by and for and of the planet itself. With each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything. And notice the breath of the planet eventually expands out to become the breath of the cosmos. For with each breath, you aren't just connected to everything in our atmosphere, but also everything our atmosphere connects you to. Eventually, at the very edge, space, and in turn, every other part of space. And so we can say, with each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything throughout all of creation, including that energy that underwrites everything else, the divine, a light that perhaps originates in your perception at a great distance, yet it draws closer with each breath that you bring in. Eventually, close enough that you can perceive those twin frequencies that together comprise the divine light, the frequency of the divine itself and the frequency of perfect health, intertwined such that there is no separating one from the other. And it's not just perfect health as we understand or perceive it as human beings, perfect physical or emotional or mental or spiritual health. It's every iteration known and unknown. This light eventually reaching out and connecting in to you, perhaps initially at your nostrils and then instantaneously throughout every level of your being, known and unknown. An invitation extended to each of the smallest aspects of you. Come, return to your natural state of alignment and resonance. You may even feel as those artifacts of dissonance appear to fall away and gather at that universal drain, the resonance spreading throughout your entire being. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine, and the river is flowing. For whatever remains in separation, I invite you to remove the universal plug. I'll do the same. Let's begin. Hmm. It's a funny thing to begin a YouTube live stream with your eyes closed like I do every week, but it feels like the right way to open space together as we come together and explore, not just with words, but much more importantly, on an experiential level within your being, an experience of the divine within, of the embodied divine within. That is to say, the visceral experience, the felt in your body experience of the divine. And of course, some people have a difficult time. What does that mean? Is there a tingling? Is there a sensation? It can be challenging. What is that feeling? How do I open to that more fully? Some people, it seems, may never really be able to open to that experience because of how they're wired. And it's not that there's a problem there, it's just a recognition that I want to acknowledge. There are many different ways that we have an experience of the divine within. And it's so important for that you be open to that, to be with that experience for yourself, to not compare that to the ways that I refer to it and or the ways that other people might refer to it in the comments and so on, but just to be open to that experience within. It's my experience that one of the ways that the divine expresses through me facilitates and supports very naturally that experience unfolding. And that's one of the reasons we come together each week to have that experience. Before I forget, I want to just acknowledge Gary. Thank you for checking in. Judy just said hi. Wonderful to be with you, Judy, as well. Glad you're here. She said, got here late. Glad to be with all. Better late than never. No worries at all. We just finished some Divine Connecting Breath, opening into our theme for this week, the three phases of I am, and trying to understand integration through the lens of mindfulness. I want to draw some pictures here and just try to illuminate or illustrate this in a different way. Let me see if I can put the doohickey up here, the screen up, so we can. Oops, there's the palette. Let's see how I do. There's actually really four phases, so I'm just going to try to give you an overview, and then we'll expand on this. And let me see if I can actually make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So in the three phases that I mentioned in my From My Heart this week, earlier today in email. And by the way, if you're not receiving email from me currently, you're certainly welcome to add your name and email address. It's free. There's a link in the description below for you if you'd like to be on my email list. And so what I was delineating in the email earlier were actually the second, the third, and the fourth phases. Let's talk about the first as well. So in the second phase, I illustrated it this way in the email with a left angle bracket. And the third phase, I used an ellipsis. And then the fourth phase, I used this other angle bracket. But there's a, and then in these, another way of describing this is I am, right? I am, and this would be not, and this is I am, and then there we could put a big X, and then oops, this is an M, and this is I am. Now, or maybe it's I am like that. So in any case, this is really interesting though. Look at this. This third segment here is very similar to the first segment, and usually the first segment precedes an exploration of mindfulness. So the the identification here, I guess we would do it like this: is an arrow would be I am X, and the X here would be I am the emotions. or the feelings, etc. Right? There's a strong identification with the body and the circumstances of the body. So I am my thoughts, I am the feelings I have in my heart, or I am that sense of being that's going on. So if we look at the integration process, this is an unintegrated experience, right? I am my emotions, my thoughts, and so on. The reason why I use this angle bracket is there's this shedding of identity. There's a disidentification. I am not. This is where mindfulness kicks in. People begin exploring mindfulness here in the second phase. And so there's this shedding of I am not the vessel, which previously I said I am, right? So as I shed this identity, there's actually a disembodiment dynamic going on in this phase. I am not. I am not my emotions. I am not my feelings. I am not these things. And this actually can continue in a variety of different ways here as well. I am not these things. And then as we move deeper into integration, there could be other explorations, right? It could be what happens after this disidentification, right? For a lot of people, there's a huge question mark here. Where is this going? I am confused. I am overwhelmed. If I'm not those things and I'm the silent observer, I'm actually going to put the screen down for just a minute here and we can connect on a deeper level, or at least it's my impression of a deeper level that we're connecting when I'm not distracted. Maybe it's giving me a chance to connect at a deeper level with you by not being focused on what I was drawing here. The key here is if the question is I am not these things, then what am I? And generally this is referred to from a mindfulness perspective as a silent observer. So there's this identity that begins to be developed, right? Instead of being drawn into the emotions or drawn into the feelings or the thoughts that one is having, there's this ability to observe that. And in that observation, it's a highly disembodied dynamic, right? Because I become disidentified, which is really essential developmentally, but it's not an integration initially, right? Initially, this is a disintegration, a disidentification, a disembodiment. I am not these things. So in this disidentification or disembodiment, there's this other identity. I'm this thing over here that's observing me. I am looking in on myself. I am noticing these things, etc. And this can bring about a profound sense of calm. And this is beautiful. But what I want to do is I want to advance the conversation a little bit further. What's the next step? What do we do with these things that continue coming up over here such that we can then become integrated again, right? If we're always in a disintegrated or a disembodied dynamic, then we're sort of looking outside in, not just at life, but also at our own interior, the interior world that's unfolding. And there's no integration associated with that. And so what happens when we go through an embodiment practice, a soul embodiment practice, is we have an opportunity to transmute these things that are coming up. That is to say, to burn them up in the presence of the embodied divine. The process for that, while that sounds really exciting and dramatic, it's very simple. You just feel whatever there is coming up. So if there are emotions that you were previously identified with, let me see if I can pull this up here. And let me just see if I can draw another picture for just a moment here. We'll just try to simplify this. So if these are the thoughts, whoops, my handwriting today is really special. Let me see if I can take another attempt at that. Thoughts. Here we go. Thoughts. Now that's working a little bit better. This is the thinking coming on. Or here's the heart. These are feelings. Right? If I'm not the thoughts and I'm not the feelings, then the question is, what am I? Oops, am I? And this is where this movement that I was trying to describe earlier, this is what am I, right? And this is where the work begins. What am I? This is where we begin opening up to an experience of, well, perhaps I am an expression of the divine. And there can be an enormous amount of tension here. As I wrote about earlier today, this identification or this transition between the work that's going on here, the I am not, and also perhaps even identifications going on with these earlier experiences, right? Instead of not being identified, we could be identified with my thoughts. I am the thinker. I am the feeler. And not just I am the thinker, but I am the thoughts that I am having. And so there can be this focus on, well, I'm going to have different thoughts. I'm going to have different feelings, this expression of control, which is a very important and essential developmental movement. But it's part of the ellipsis here in this third phase, I am, right? So one of the answers in this phase, if I'm in a control dynamic or in an empowered dynamic, might be I am the author of my life. I am the experiences that I am intending to have. I am the manifestation and expression of my intentions. The role of mantra might be very, very important in this developmental phase. This developmental phase might include identification with empowerment, but it might eventually, and actually does involve eventually, this process of moving towards a more integrated experience. So it's not just I am the author of these dynamics, but eventually I am the conduit through which the divine expresses. There's a process of letting go of control that's happening here in this third phase of I am, or in my earlier writing, the second phase. But as I say, as I reflected at the beginning of the video, I was ignoring this first phase because it's sort of pre-mindfulness, but I think it's important to set that as a foundation. In any case, when we start recognizing that we're having this experience of moving from the thinking dynamic, right, down into the feeling dynamic, whoops, down here, and then further down into a being dynamic. And the being dynamic also changes over time because being might be perceived as a function of thinking influencing or feeling influencing. And then eventually those things become inverted, right? And the being presence of the embodied divine supersedes the thoughts that are unfolding in any person's, in the individual's awareness. And in this process is a tremendous dynamic of integration. And I'm going to set aside the drawings here for just a minute. In this process of integration is a profound return to the body. So instead of being out here in this disembodied dynamic looking in, there's a reintegration happening for me to actually feel but not be identified with the thoughts or the feelings opens this pathway for transmutation, which eventually opens up the last phase of I am, which is a fully integrated dynamic. It is an embodied dynamic. It's why those two brackets, I think, are so important. At the beginning, this disidentification, all this work in the interim, and then this, it's not just a re-identification, it's a reintegration and an embodiment of I am all of these things. Now, having transmuted all the expressions that are not who I am, the expressions of dissonance, the thoughts that arise in separation, the feelings that arise in separation, and so on. I am these experiences of the divine expression now through this undistorted experience of the interior vessel, the canvas upon which the divine is painting and expressing. Okay. It's a big topic. I wanted to try to hit it from a couple of different perspectives and approach this question from a couple of different perspectives to suggest this recognition, not just to recognize, but also to suggest this developmental journey beyond I am not these things, beyond I am confused or I am frustrated or I am overwhelmed or I am discombobulated, having had these experiences of profound divine presence sandwiched up against experiences of trauma coming up for attention, wounding, and so on, that recall this earlier dynamic of disempowerment or empowerment. But eventually, as all of this integrates, we come to a place where it is simply in the final phase, in the third or the fourth phase, depending on which phase we start counting with, I am. And there is nothing more to say beyond that. In I am, it is the I am of the totality of the undistorted expression of divine presence, not as separate, but as one. So there's no observer anymore. The observer and the observed have integrated once again. The thoughts and the thinker are integrated. The feelings and the human being are integrated. And indeed, the divine and the human are integrated and are one. I am in this third phase. Okay, I'm just now getting caught up on questions here. Angelica checking in earlier. Susan, glad to join in with you now. Angelica commenting on Yanya's book and how wonderful it is. And Susan, uh, let me see. I'm not able to read this. For me, I call it taking my ego out of whatever the situation is, then I am detached. Yes, that's a great way of looking at it, Susan. And the thing I want to suggest to you is once the ego is, and I don't actually, let me say it differently. Once the separate ego, because I believe there is actually a whole expression of the ego, once the whole ego, once the experience is of complete integration and the ego is now whole, um, we don't have to refer to things in a polarity. There doesn't have to be attachment or detachment. That's that reintegration of the final phase, let's say, the complete embodiment and experience. But to your point, it's essential to be able to come to a place of detachment as we're navigating that developmental journey. And Susan has another comment here. I find it helps me to go back to humility and recognize that I am purely a channel. That is a very, very beautiful perspective. So if we look at this from a stages of consciousness standpoint, the perspective of the channel is showing up in stage 3. If we look at stage 4 in union consciousness, the channel and what is being channeled are now one. And one of the things that I think is probably helpful to recognize is that in this dynamic, there probably really isn't much to say. So perhaps from the perspective of where we're sitting today, there's not much for us to speak of with regard to it, except to acknowledge or recognize it as a completely integrated expression of who we all really are. I'm so grateful for the comments that have come in. We'll see if there are any other questions or anything else coming up before we just sit in a deeper silent transmission before we wrap up our time together today. As I wait to see if there are any other comments or questions coming in, I do want to invite you, if you're not already a subscriber here on this channel, if you haven't already done that, I'd invite you to do so now. There's a way, yeah, if you click, there's a little logo down here in this corner on YouTube. If you click that link, it's a subscription pop-up. You can subscribe to the channel. Would love for you to subscribe. And if you click the bell to be notified, you'll receive an email every time new content is loaded or I go on live with a live stream. And in the same way, if this content today is resonating with you, I invite you to give the video a thumbs up. Anytime I'm stumbling over my words, I can tell there's something much deeper wanting to express, and it feels like that is what is happening now. It can't be contained within language. And so, thus, it's best for us to step aside, or at least for me to step aside and get out of the way and stop trying to communicate about it with words. I also don't see any other comments coming up. Grateful to everyone who's here today. It's wonderful to be with you. Let's take a deep breath in our transition into deeper transmission. Deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath, just letting go of all these ideas and coming back to the raw experience of the divine within, for which ultimately there are no words. There is no structure, no framework, no context. For when we let go fully, all the reference points that were previously so important, all in separation, disappear, and all that remains is an experience of wholeness that is impossible to speak of. Hmm. You may notice as we drift into deeper space together and deeper into this transmission that there are expressions or experiences of resonance, buzzing, tingling, and so on in the body. Perhaps there are loops showing up in the mind or in the emotions, or perhaps resonance is flowing there as well. If there are things coming up to be felt physically or emotionally or otherwise, I invite you to be with them fully. For as we sink into a more embodied state, those are transmuted to the degree that you're willing to feel whatever's coming up. Something else I often forget to say when we're sitting together on Wednesdays is it is so helpful. This may be a little bit of a disruption to some sitting here right now. It might be a disruption for you. It's so helpful to let go of intention as we sink in. Intention is a way of trying to direct energy or to direct the divine. But there's no need to direct the divine. We don't have to direct energy. As we open to a deeper experience of who we really are, who you really are, something begins to unfold on every level of your being and eventually every level of your life that is completely beyond anything you could have ever conceived of. And so don't even try to conceive of it. Don't try to build on your dreams or imagine what that would be. God's presence is uncontainable. And so our attempts to contain or express it actually create a distortion in the dynamic of being who we really are. And that distortion leaves us as the ones in charge. But if we subordinate ourselves, if we let go of that idea and open up to the divine flow in, through, and as each of us, in, through, and as you, it's a very, very different dynamic. It's like the difference between standing in a river and trying to direct the river where it's flowing. Let's dam this river. Let's dig a channel. Let's push it over here. And as the river flows more and more, we're trying to resist. Oh, I want this to happen. I feel all that effort through your body and all this energy going into that. Whereas if we just let go and allow ourselves to float with the river, eventually there's such a deep level of integration. The difference between the river and you is gone. There we are. There's that reintegration point, that bracket that is angled to a point to the right. We come back to one. Hmm. Beautiful. In the same way, if you're trying to direct energy towards someone else or to the planet or to every person, it's like an intention. The divine is already fully present within every aspect of the planet and within each and every person. So when you just turn your attention inward and be with the experience fully, the depth of resonance expands exponentially for you and paradoxically for everyone because we're all one, but not because we held an intention. It's like saying, I'm going to intend that waves are going to be rolling into a beach on some other part of the planet. I'm just going to keep intending it. Those waves are rolling in. And if we get a webcam up or we go visit that beach, we look at it. Yep, look at my intentions. There are those waves. And then maybe we do an experiment. We just stop intending that. Look, the waves are still rolling in, but now your experience of resonance changes dramatically. What is opening up for you shifts because you're no longer directing energy somewhere else. You're staying with the experience of the waves, the movement of divine expression within you. So if you're looking for an opportunity in the context of this gathering each week to deepen your experience of resonance, of divine presence, just be with yourself. Drop your intention and be with yourself. Those two things will open an exponential deepening of the resonance of divine presence within you. And they will set up a series of transformative shifts that are impossible to speak of directly. And yet they are the direct result of you letting go of your intention and allowing yourself to be fully present with the divine as it expresses through you. Hmm. Beautiful. Before we wrap up, a couple of things that are coming up here in the queue and also in my awareness. First of all, I would invite you to begin returning that universal plug. I'll do the same as I begin bringing the transmission to a close. It's interesting. JR wrote a question. Could you give an overview of the universal drain plug and associated process? Appreciate the question, JR. I'll update the description. There was an earlier live stream that I did. I don't remember how many weeks ago or months back it was, where I went into great depth around that. And there's also a link, I think, already in the description to Divine Connecting Breath, which is where the original sort of training video that I put out about that. It's free. You can click the link to see that. That in conjunction with the greater exploration from one of these Wednesday live streams, I think would perfectly and powerfully answer your questions. And I would direct you to those. Some wonderful exchanges between Yanya and other members of the community about her book. If you're interested in checking out Yanya's book, I'll put a link in the description to Yanya's book so you have a way of going to Amazon to get that. There are some wonderful comments here, and Yanya has been a longtime member of the community. So I'll include a link in the description for anyone who would like to check that out. And Susan checking in, grateful to you too, Ken. Namaste and many blessings. And to you as well, Susan. Grateful to everyone, really, for the opportunity to sit and explore and resonate, to share a few ideas, but most importantly, to sink into this deep interior experience of divine presence, to come and dance at that deeper level in whatever phase of I am that you are currently exploring and working with in your life. Plug all the way in, transmission to a close now. Looking forward to being back with you again. For everyone who is tuning in to the Deep Dive virtual retreat series, we've got Deep Dive 13 tomorrow. If you'd like to check that out and join that group, there's a link in the description for that as well. It really is an extraordinary group of people doing extraordinary work, really just sinking in at a much deeper level, much deeper resonance. And there's a conversation that unfolds each time we gather in that group that I imagine would be quite extraordinary for anyone to participate in. I invite you to be part of that if you're interested in feeling resonance with that. A couple of other people checking in and saying, thanks, JR, for that. Angelica talking about recommending Yanya's book. Awesome. I'll put a link in the description for that, but it'll be on the replay. I don't have a way of doing that on the fly right now. Glad Yanya's work is resonating. It's such a beautiful community of spiritual messengers here. Such an honor to sit and explore and resonate with you. Until we're together again soon, much love and peace. And thank you all so much for checking in. Look forward to interacting with you on the comments, not just here live, but also on the replay. Please do share if there are questions that are coming up. Doesn't matter if it's live on the replay. I would love to interact with you there. And who knows, maybe your question opens a topic that becomes next week's point of exploration, not just for the writing that I share in the newsletter, but also for our gathering here in our virtual community circle. All right. Look forward to being back with you again soon. For now, peace. Oops, got to figure out how to end the broadcast. Here we go. Bye for now. Peace.